Hey guys, what's going on? This is Kyle and Adam at ProjectionHub back here with another video where we're going to be taking a look at an SBA scenario. Today's one is a Reddit post of somebody that's looking into the acquisition of a business, and they're trying to dial in the valuation of that and what's going to make most sense in that process. Now, we're going to be looking at this from an SBA perspective. I think that they are also considering an SBA loan mentioned here. So I'm going to read through this quick scenario and then we'll get Adam's input on maybe how he would value the business or what method makes most sense to him when looking at a deal. All right, here we go. So I ran the numbers on one business 3 different ways and got 3 very different numbers. Which valuation method do you buyers actually trust? This summer, I've been working for a startup that builds tools for small businesses to screen and value small businesses. So I guess this person isn't actually the one buying the business, but they're working with people who are doing that. As part of the process, I've been screening different businesses, helping people in the acquisition process, digging further down into the numbers. The company's tools offer a few different ways to value a business. I've been trying them all as doing diligence for different businesses. First, I usually take a debt service approach. Lowest price where the loan still covers with a debt service coverage ratio above 1.5. The second is a discounted cash flow analysis. And the third is more relative, where I use market multiples from similar acquisitions to see how the deal will shake out. What surprised me is how these 3 methods can yield such different numbers on the same business listing. A business can be worth one number to a bank and a very different one on a discounted cash flow spreadsheet, and yet again, another one on comps. Asking price the broker publishes usually don't match any of them and is usually higher than the actual debt service number. That, I guess, kind of explains half the threads in this sub about people's deals where the SBA math doesn't really work. So the question is, people who have actually closed deals, do you prefer one methodology over another one? Go back and forth, which one I truly trust. So yeah, maybe you give us the breakdown on what approach you like to take when considering an acquisition, and you can comment on what you think about the utilization of the other methods or not, or how often you see that. But yeah, give us your take how you approach these types of deals.
Well, I think if you are planning to use an SBA loan to finance the purchase, then you got to make it work with the way the SBA math is gonna work, which is based on debt service coverage ratio. And here they mentioned debt service coverage ratio of 1.5. Typically lenders would be willing to go down to 1.25 potentially. Not necessarily sure that you should do that as a buyer. Like, that may not be what you want to offer, but we could probably get down to 1.25. And just to kind of clarify what that means, a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 means you've got $1.25 of cash flow for every dollar of debt service or loan payments. So I think that's the way to back into a price. And you would assume like a 90% SBA loan and a 10% equity injection. Yeah. And that gives you a value. I think the discounted cash flow method's probably going to give you a higher value, and then the multiple could be hit or miss, but
depending on what multiple you look up,
website you're going to find a multiple. But yeah, I mean, DCF and a multiple don't really matter if you're planning to use SBA financing. The DSCR has to work. And even if you're not planning to use SBA financing, I still think it makes a lot of sense to look at a deal from that perspective, because a lot of buyers are going to be using SBA. So that can kind of help you know that you're not overpaying. Like if you do the DSCR method and it's like, yeah, this is worth $1 million, or I could borrow $1 million, then probably shouldn't pay 1.5, even if you could. So
I know this isn't the framing of this particular post, but when looking at valuations, I almost feel like it's such a disservice to small business owners, like the whole valuation conversation does. Because I think, you run into a lot of business owners, whether that's by working directly with the seller or via the buyer, like you're kind of hearing about the seller through them. And that is just how many times sellers have unrealistic expectations for what the business is worth. And a lot of times it's based off of the premise of they're using a specific methodology to like a revenue multiple or something about what their business is worth. Or they think they take a multiple of how the business is, like a cash flow multiple, plus the value of the assets, and that creates an inflated amount of the value. So I think like one thing is that the cash flow or like the debt service coverage ratio calculation, like that's not a valuation, right? That's just trying to give a basis of what a lender is going to be willing to lend for that, right? So if the buyer is if they need to finance it and they can't get someone to approve the loan, then they just can't buy the business. It's not even really about the value of the business. It's just like if someone's not have the ability to pull together the money, then you don't have a buyer, right? So in a sense, that's the value of your business if no one's willing to pay for it. But outside of that, I just think it's a lot of the different methodologies don't feel like they are as applicable to your average, truly small businesses who are going to have to sell to somebody who has to get a loan, because I think more often than not, the seller's disappointed probably with how much they can get for the business, right? Like, how does that keep happening? How do we always get to the point where it's time to sell the business and then it's not worth what they think it is?
Yeah.
I just kind of surprises me. That happens almost every time.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times too, you hear this like SDE, a multiple of SDE, of seller's discretionary earnings, and usually they have not backed out of that SDE number a salary for the next buyer or whoever's going to like run it or replace the seller. So this is it makes a huge difference on kind of smaller deals, because you might have 200,000 of SDE, but you need $100,000 person or $100,000 salary to run the thing. Well, then what do you really have as cash flow available for debt service is 100,000, not 200,000. So it's going to make a huge difference. And I see that overlooked pretty often.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I should clarify that it's like, I don't hold that against sellers. It's not like I think that they're dumb for doing that. I just, I think a lot of times businesses start as a one-man thing or something very small, and then over time it's grown into one other thing, and it's been wrapped up in their personal financials, and they have cars, and like there's so much stuff wrapped into once that I don't blame them for being hard to be impartial and kind of separate those things, because to the person who started it, to the founder, it's probably worth a whole lot more to anybody else. And so, not to discount their hard work or what it's actually worth to them. It's just on paper, when someone's going to have to buy it, they got to get approved for that probably from someone, or convince an investor it's worth it, or something like that. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel for sellers, because a lot of times it's a surprise when they get to that point and it's not worth what they've been told it was or what they think it was.
And then it just gets worse from there, because then once they find out what they're going to have to pay in taxes, probably it's like the dollar amount that they actually get to keep just kind of will keep getting beat up, which is why you just end up like not selling. You just keep it going and maybe just let it kind of drive into the ground or over time. And that might actually make sense, like from a math perspective for the seller.
Sure. Like better to just collect the cash flow from it over time until it makes sense to close it down.
If you could make 200,000 this year and then just take your foot off the gas and make 175 the next year and then 150 and then just get it to the point where you shut it down and you're paying taxes on that profit instead of like all at once you get $1 million and have a big chunk of tax. Like, it makes sense why there's this supposed to be silver tsunami of all these people selling, but it doesn't really seem like that's happening. And I think it's because of things like this. You start to do the math and you're like, I guess maybe I should just keep going.
Right. The number of businesses that there are compared to the number of businesses that are actually buyable are like two very different numbers. So I guess I'm not sure is actually who found this video, but I would say if you're a person that's on the buy side and you're kind of thinking about an opportunity or how you're going to approach them, and you just want to get an expert opinion on that, we offer a free SBA review, provide some high-level details about your situation or potential deal you're looking at, and we'll give you some free feedback on that and what we think the approval odds are. Or even if you happen to watching this and you're a seller and you just heard that rant we went on and you're trying to think about, well, what is my business actually worth, or what can I be doing to prepare that for sale? That's something we've made previous videos on and have talked to people that way too. Feel free to reach out to us at support@ProjectionHub.com. Be happy to kind of game plan and talk about what you can do to sell for as much as possible, within a few years. So thanks for joining the video, and we'll see you in the next one.